All right, cool. Let's kick it off. So, hey everyone, thanks so much for coming. This is Introduction to Web Coding. We're putting this on from Oasis, which we'll be talking about in a moment. And like I said, we're going to be talking about why we code for the web, and then how we actually do it, and then we'll be going ahead and writing some code using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And despite this being workshop 4A, that's kind of like, we have like a workshop series with Oasis. The first 3A workshops are not prerequisite for this. So if you have no coding experience, you'll be totally okay. If you do, that might help you out a little bit, but definitely not prerequisite. So who are we? My name is Chris Myers. I'm a third year computer science and cognitive psychology combined major, currently 23. And I'm also the Oasis workshop coordinator for this semester. So it's my job to plan out these workshops and put them on every Saturday with like our workshop series, and help arrange collaborations like we're doing right now with NUWIT.
Hey guys, my name's Jaywan. I'm a fourth year CS major here at Northeastern, and I also serve as a mentor in the Oasis Accelerator program. And I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks all for having us. So what is Oasis? Great question. So Oasis is a new program started this year by some former current members of Sandbox on campus, though not like super tightly affiliated right now. But what the Oasis program is an opportunity to gain three things in your undergraduate career. Number one is mentorship. So Oasis is comprised of two parts. There's a project accelerator, and there's also a 10-week workshop series. So with the project accelerator, that's also 10 weeks long, and that we pair students up with mentors who will be helping them out throughout the 10 weeks to build a project. They'll also be placed in teams, so mentors will be watching over an entire team. And the mentors, like which J1 is one of course, will be providing guidance about how to make a project plan, when your team runs into troubles, like how to overcome them, what technologies to use. And just mentors are typically upperclassmen, figures who are experienced, maybe have gone on a co-op before, experienced in project development to help you along in your own project. So that's where the mentorship aspect comes in. Community aspect comes from the fact that we're a big cohort. Oasis takes on a cohort each semester of participants in the accelerator, and you'll be working together with your team and also seeing projects presented by other teams to gain a better connections within the undergraduate project development community at Northeastern. The workshop series also is a chance to meet other people. And then finally, experience. We want to provide students with experience in building their own projects before or after they go on co-op, so they can see ideas they have come to life, which is really our main focus. So to sum us up, Oasis is committed to helping you bring your project idea to life by providing you with the mentorship and through the accelerator and tangible skills through the workshop series to create it, because it can be very daunting starting out, and finding a team through Oasis just makes it a lot easier. And then before we get started, so for the agenda today, we're going to be talking about how we code for the web, and a little bit about why we do it, and then give you guys an intro to these languages, CSS, JavaScript, and then go ahead and start coding in them. And we're gonna have a little bit of time for questions too, if anyone has any. I think you're muted, J1.
Oops, sorry about that. So I'm gonna start off. How do we make web experiences? Has anyone tried making a website before, out of curiosity? Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple different ways to go about it, right? The first and kind of the easier way, as Chris, you mind turning the slide here? Thank you. We have these website like creation sites like Weebly, Wix, Squarespace. I'm sure you guys have heard of them, where you can kind of just drag and drop stuff around the screen and build a website. These are awesome because they're super easy to start without any coding experience. And you can build a website pretty quickly, see the results, and in order to update them, you don't really need to know how to code. So super useful, but they definitely do have limitations as well. You have to pay for the service. So you're not only paying for hosting and all that, but for using the service as well. And then also if you want some sort of custom behavior, it can get hard to implement that with one of these website builders. And so the next option for building your website is to code it. Chris, you want to touch on that, or should I finish up here?
I can hop in really quick. So, as someone said, these website builders are great, but we're going to code it because it just gives us so much more flexibility. And eventually, you'll be able to use some of these cool buzzwords: React, Angular, Node.js, all these technologies you've been hearing about. Before you can really get into those, though, you have to understand these fundamentals because they all use at their core HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let's start talking about those. HTML, hypertext markup language. Don't worry about memorizing that. The one thing you have to know about this, besides the fact that it's not programming language, it's a markup language, is HTML is the skeleton of your web page. This code describes what it looks like. So every web page is an HTML document, and it contains a bunch of elements: images, text, links, other stuff too, like boxes and things you can define. There's like a huge collection of these nested within each other that define what your page look like. That's what HTML does for you. And really quick, how does that work? It's just an HTML file. So when you open a web page, it's just a normal file like a Word document, all a different file type, that you happen to open this file using a web browser. So you open a text file using Microsoft Word, maybe you open an HTML file using Google Chrome or Firefox or one of those. And the browser parses that file and then renders it for you in a web page. And that's pretty much what a browser does. That's really what they're built to do, and they do it really well. So the HTML, remember, is the skeleton of your web page, defines what it looks like. Next we have CSS. So CSS works in tandem with HTML, but like it's not a programming language. It's actually a style sheet language. So it helps you make your HTML prettier. Basically changes what the tags look like so they're not boring. So HTML, you get all these tags. Tags are elements, remember, that you put in your page and combine together. By default, though, they look really boring. The early days of HTML, you would have to like inline, add like extra tags to make your page look better, like change text color, things like that. Luckily, now we have CSS, which is a separate file that links to your HTML file and changes what your elements look like. So instead of having that boring blue underline link, you'll have a bright orange cursive font, maybe italicized link that goes bigger when you click on it. You might not want to do that, but you could. And that's CSS is what powers all the good looking sites you see on the internet. So CSS is the pretty part of the web page. Changes what your HTML looks like.
So up until now, we've talked about HTML, CSS, and you can build some pretty cool web pages with that. But if you're limited to HTML and CSS, what you'll find is that your web page doesn't interact the way you want it to. It's not going to change. It's not going to be super dynamic. It's going to be a pretty static thing. And so the way we change that is with JavaScript. So JavaScript, yes, a real programming language now. No longer we're making skeletons or adding styles. We're actually programming stuff. It runs in the web browser environment, and it lets you do all the things that you want to do with your website that aren't just looking good. And so what we can do is we can take our HTML files and we can link JavaScript within them in order to give our website new capabilities. So we can do things like edit, remove, or add HTML tags. We can change their styles through JavaScript. We can change what they contain and a lot of other things. So how does JavaScript look? It's an entire coding language, so lots of different syntax. And you can get kind of really deep with JavaScript and do a lot of cool things pretty quickly. So yeah, if you're familiar with any other programming language, similar ideas, but a little bit different syntax. And we'll cover that. We'll go ahead and cover that. Chris, do you want to take this or should I take this?
I think this is like almost the last slide. So I guess I can just wrap it up. So Yeah, so once again, what about these cool buzzwords? Well, once again, these are JavaScript frameworks and libraries. Maybe you've heard that term. Basically, these kind of like add more to JavaScript to let you do some more advanced things a little easier. But before you can really use those, you kind of have to learn JavaScript. So, you know, it's gonna come with a good analogy. Before you can make a 5-star meal, you have to learn how to cook an egg, maybe. So basically, these are really cool, but you get to, you know, later on. So we can code our own web experience using these 3 languages, and eventually we can start using these buzzword libraries to give us a little bit more power. And that's how you make these really powerful web apps, which are kind of a other category of web experiences, like Google Drive or whatever. So, does anyone have any questions about that? About anything we covered, or even like Oasis?
Yeah, like what is Oasis exactly? I've never heard of it before.
Oh yeah, sorry. So Oasis is I can go back to that slide. So Oasis is a new program starting just this semester, which essentially is it's comprised of 2 parts. So there's a project accelerator, which are closed for this semester, but will be opening up next semester, that pairs you up with a team and then with a mentor, an experienced mentor like Jaewon. And throughout the course of 10 weeks, you and your team and mentor will come with an idea for a project and then build that project. And the mentor will provide you with technical help, with project planning help, and any other help you need. And it meets every week on Saturdays. There's also a workshop series, another part that you're encouraged to attend if you're in the accelerator, but it's also open to anyone, that takes you through all the skills needed to build your own web apps. So this workshop was originally, it's a little bit modified for this, but is part of our 10-week series, because you have to know how to do this stuff to make your own web apps. Good question. Also drop the link to Oasis. Just do the link to Oasis in the chat there if you want to check it out.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, if you have any other questions about Oasis, definitely reach out to us.
And feel free to drop questions in the chat if you don't want to speak up.
Last call for questions.
I think we're good.
All right, cool. Well, actually, that's perfect because now we have a little bit more time to code. So it's demo time. We have like maybe 43 minutes left. I think we have until 8 here. So maybe like 40 minutes or so. We'll wrap up a little bit at the end. So now we're going to be breaking into 2 breakout rooms, and one with Jaewon and one with myself. And we're going to be basically learning how to write these languages. So we have a tutorial here. Let me drop the link in the chat. So what I want, before we end the breakout rooms, go ahead and open up that link. That's to a GitHub repo that we have on our Oasis GitHub account. So what we're going to be doing before we head out is using a program called Replit, which is essentially an online code editor that will let us edit HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you use like an IDE, you won't have to like git clone any of this, although you could do that later. The code is also in the GitHub repo. But we'll be giving you instructions for how to get started with that. But you'll basically be using the code kind of in the browser, which is super cool. So I'm not sure I'm able to do it, but would whoever's the host of this meeting be able to like split us everyone up into 2 breakout rooms?
Yeah, Emma's taking care of
that.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll let's keep chatting.
Okay, so you want So Christopher's in one room and then J1 in the other. Is that what you want?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. I think we're good to go. Whenever you're ready. So is now good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Whenever you're ready. All right. Hey, everyone. So first things first, I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen again. Okay. So first things first, everyone go ahead, if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and open up that, go ahead and open up that GitHub repo I shared it in the chat while I try to find my, there we go. Okay, so does anyone not have this open yet or still need the link? Okay, so what we're gonna do first is we just kind of like went through the like the basics of these languages, but what we're gonna do first is go ahead and click on the intro folder in that GitHub repo. Should be like in the top level there. And before we do anything else, everyone take like 1 to 2 minutes or so to read this README here. That's gonna explain really quick what files we're gonna be working with. Just these 3 files here. 1 HTML, 1 CSS, 1 JavaScript. So, and then once you're done with that, you can go ahead and open the replit. But I'll talk a little bit more once you get there about what we're gonna be doing coding there. So take a minute or so to read this README. Okay, so that was kind of actually it was a little bit more technical, but sort of like an overview of what files we're going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and actually open up this REPL it myself. And yeah, so go fork it. I wonder if I can like open this incognito. So you should be able to make edits to this and it won't affect the original. Just because it's kind of like its own separate thing. But it's hosted within my account, so I don't want to edit the original. But anyway, first we're going to be talking about some HTML. So back on my screen, let's take a quick look at what HTML looks like. Okay, so talk about what it is to skeleton the page. Well, this is actually what that code is going to looks like in a real HTML file. So we have page elements, right? We were talking about they're composed of tags, which content for which goes between them. So what this means is a tag is essentially a word or a symbol that represents an element. And they're all pretty descriptive. There's a bunch of them in HTML. They're all predefined. And they do different things. So let's walk through this basic skeleton of a page, just talking about what it does. So here's our first tag, HTML. We put inside of tags, we put content. So inside this HTML tag, we put the content of our page. Everything goes in between there. Every page has one. Probably the second most important tags we're always going to use are the head tag and the body tag. So these are vital. And basically in the head tag, we have metadata about our page. This is where we set the title of our page. This is where we link other like JavaScript and CSS to our page. This is where we put stuff that doesn't actually show up in the page, but still kind of like affects how it works. And finally, we have the body tag. And inside this tag, we put more tags. So we nest tags within tags within tags. That's what big HTML pages look like. Inside this body tag, we put tags that actually show up on our page. So you can see we have two here, the H1 tag and A tag. So these are super important tags. I think these are definitely worth learning. H1 is a header. There's also H2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically, the higher the number, the smaller the header. But H1 is like a main header for your page that shows up on top. And then A is a link. Now with tags, you can also give them attributes. So in addition to putting stuff inside of them, you can add properties to them inside those angle brackets, which all the tags have. In this one, we have the href attribute for A tags that tells us what the link goes to. So head tag sets the title, H1 tag is the header, A tag is a link. Let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So this is the rendered result of that. As you can see, we have our header here, it's just big text, and then our link here. Pretty basic, not the most attractive page, but this is a valid HTML page. So let's try making something a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna go ahead, actually I might have to share my whole screen here. Okay, so can you guys see my code screen now? Okay, so now we're actually gonna write a little bit of our own. And my philosophy is the best way to learn this is by doing. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna walk through this really quick, and then we're gonna have some time to actually write our own code. If you have any questions, feel free to speak out, throw them in the chat. But I think after this, you guys should know enough to start writing some HTML. So this is a real HTML file, not just a picture in my Google slide. But as you can see, same thing. So we have this HTML tag and everything is inside of it, except for this gray text. Those are comments. They look kind of weird in HTML, but feel free to read those now or later. We have our head tag where we set our title. We also have these two other tags, this tag link and this tag script. Those link our CSS and JavaScript code to this HTML file, so we're not going to worry about those quite yet. So feel free to ignore the head for now. What we're really looking for is this body tag. So remember, super important HTML tag. And this inside of here is where we put our stuff. This tag holds the page content you can see. And here we just have a bunch of tags that show up on our page. So we have this H1, this H2, we have this image, which we see has this src source attribute, which is basically just the URL of the image, which you can use any URL for any image on the web, and we also set its height and width, other attributes. We have an A tag where that's a link, so it goes to Google, and then we have a button here that shouldn't do anything. The cool thing about Replit is after we write our code, we can just hit run, and it shows up right over here in this panel here. And this is the rendered result of all this HTML code. So now it's your turn. We're gonna take about 5-6 minutes here to actually write some HTML code in this page and see what it looks like. So if you've never done it before, you might be wondering, all right, how do I just start writing code in this new language? Well, the best thing I think to do is take a look at previously defined tags and either change them or copy them and add new ones. So for example, here we have this H1 tag, welcome to my page. All right, we see where that shows up in the page. Let's say I want to change that to welcome to my, all right, okay. Got kind of angry for a second there. Welcome to my site. So you change that text and try that again. All right, and now it shows up over there. Let's say I want to add another heading. Let's go ahead and copy this. And now it says it twice. So go ahead and take 5 minutes, try adding more tags, and also try these challenges down below. There's a couple of links here too. This one is to like a help guide, and this one is to a list of every tag in HTML. So if you want to just like try adding new ones, feel free to go to that link. And these are all the tags that exist. So we have some of the ones we talked about, head. Honestly, most of these never get used, but feel free to try them out. So yeah, go ahead and take 5-6 minutes now to do that. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to read all those comments too. Just kind of explain what's going on. Yeah, I'd also say definitely take a look at that like raw.github content.com link for the commonly used HTML elements. Because most of these never get used. Like most, like there's so many, but a lot of them just never get used. But these actually are pretty important ones. These listed here. It's actually pretty cool. There's like a meter element. Lets you display a little like progress meter. You can see it over here. I did not know that existed.
That's so fun.
I feel like there's so many that like are so like are so disappointing. Like this is the legend tag. It's just text. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the w3schools.com, probably the best site on the web for just learning about all the tag. Like you just click on them, it shows you how to use them. Same goes for CSS, JavaScript. This is actually a really good site. I use this all the time. Yeah, so was anyone able to try some of the like challenges below or get those working? Or have any questions about any of those, how to make them work? All right, so with that, we're gonna move on to the other language we were talking about. So we're gonna do some CSS. Let me share my other screen again. Okay, so we should be back on my, okay, cool. Yeah, should be back on my Firefox. Okay, so that was a little bit introduction to HTML. Now let's check out CSS, cascading style sheets, the pretty aspect of our web page. So what is CSS? It's honestly really simple. It's pretty easy to get started with. Basically, there's just 3 parts of the entire language. So number 1, remember CSS changes what HTML elements look like. So number 1 is the selector. We have to choose which HTML elements we want to change what look like. And pretty much how that looks is we just put in the name of the element. There are other ways we'll talk about to, let's say you don't want to change every H1 element, but just certain ones. There's ways you can do that, but I'll mention that later. So this, and it goes in the same place though. Syntax looks the same. So we have the selector, and we have some curly brackets. That's just like, I don't know, Java or like some other coding languages maybe you've seen. We put our CSS code. So inside these curly brackets are all the rules that will apply to H1. And then we put the rules. So font size 400%, color blue. These might seem like totally random. Like, how are you supposed to possibly know? Like, you want to change the font size, that you have to put font dash size for that. Or color corresponds to font color, not like the background color of it. That also is basically just the docs. So I've linked to the HTML, the CSS file to get to that. But yeah, that's pretty much just take a look at the docs. So let me demonstrate how that's done. I'm gonna go back to the REPL.it. So everyone could head over to the style.css file in the REPL.it. And inside there, we're going to take a look at some CSS code and then add some of our own. So remember what we were just looking at on the slide. Again, now it's real. It's not just like an image I pasted there. So this right here from line 20 through 31 is code that will change what our H1 tag looks like. In fact, it'll make it double-sized in blue. And what do you know? Actually, our H1 over here is pretty big. It may be double-sized, maybe not, in blue. So let's walk through what these steps are. So we have the selector. We say H1. That selects all the H1. So if I change that to H2, it'll select the H2 tags. Now our H1 is no longer blue, but our H2 is bigger and blue. So selector, the color, remember those are just those properties we saw. So color changes the text color. Font size doubles the font. So maybe let's, instead of 200%, we'll make that 500%. And now our text is super big. So now go ahead, now that you kind of understand what those do, I guess ignore this for now. I'll talk about that later. But go ahead and try adding some more CSS rules. So those are just 2. So how are you supposed to know what rules there are? Well, up here, lots of comments here. So up here, I have a link to this GIF file, which has a bunch of rules that you can use. Actually, I don't think that's as helpful. Instead, actually go to this link, W3 Schools CSS ref default/ASP. So go to that. Just like with HTML, this tells us all the CSS rules we have. So we can look at this list and say, all right, I want to do text direction. I want to change, or font. I want to change the font my text is in. This works, but probably the best way of doing it, and you could also play around with this, but probably the best way of doing these is by just Googling it. So let's say I want to make my so let's change this back to H1. So they're blue and really big. Let's say I want to make them underlined. Literally 90%, like probably 99% of web developers will just do CSS underline text. And then W3 Schools, no, it's the text decoration property. So you do text decoration. We have all these values you can give it to. So let's do text decoration overline. We'll copy that, paste it in there. And now we have a line over our text. And that's basically how you use CSS. It's kind of like Googling stuff. No one actually memorizes like all 1,000 CSS rules. That's impossible. Like no one knows all these. Basically, just figure out what you want to do and Google it. But it could be also fun to look through this and try some of these out. So take 5 minutes now to try out some of these exercises here. Actually, I'll just talk about it now. You can also get more fine-grained control. So that's the way you do that is with CSS classes. So CSS classes are basically identifiers you can make that will only pinpoint certain HTML elements to apply rules to them. So let's say I only want the first of these H1s to be blue and overlined with text. So what I can do instead is, or let's say I want one of these to be orange, but I still want to have all that. So I'm going to do color orange. And then, so this is the fun class text. And then in here, you can assign a class to something by giving it a tag attribute class equals then the exact same name that you made in your CSS. And now you'll see that this is orange. So classes basically let you pinpoint certain HTML elements to do stuff with them. Also used all the time. This isn't like a niche feature. Like this is like used every day for like web developers. So take 4 or 5 minutes or so. Try out some of these challenges here. All of them are just whichever ones look cool. And yeah, just remember if you're not sure how to do something, just like look it up or check this reference sheet and yeah, and then add the CSS code. Any questions? Feel free to just throw those in the chat.
Yeah, so I was wondering, because you can apply those tags to differentiate like the same headings, for example, that also means that like completely different like HTML elements, you could apply the same CSS styling to. You're muted.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a great point. So for example, so I have H1 class equals fun text, and then we have this H2 that says look at my pages subheading there. You can give that class to this too, and it'll still pick it up. So remember that class just had text color orange. So yeah, you can apply classes to different elements, and that's totally okay. You can use the classes as many times as you want. So I'm gonna try going through these myself actually. Oh, and by the way, for you notice how like I put color orange. CSS basically just has like a million built-in colors. So basically any color you can think of, you just kind of put the name and it'll probably exist. Like fuchsia, like basically everything. But there actually is a list of all of them if you just Google like CSS color list. But yeah, you can also make your own, but honestly, these are pretty good for most cases. Blue violet. All right. So hopefully everyone got a chance to try out some of these. You know, wasn't a whole lot of time. I didn't finish myself either, but like played around, add this new classes, add a picture. But yeah, this is pretty much just to wrap up CSS. Basically, let's just change how our HTML elements look. So here we have we sum it up in one. Here we have a boring paragraph, and here we have a cool paragraph. So pink is how it says one has some CSS to make it look different. But yeah, that's pretty much CSS. Don't worry about learning all the rules too. There's like a million, because there's a lot of things you can do with it. But usually you just kind of like check the W3 Schools docs. So finally, we're gonna spend a little time in JavaScript land. JavaScript is just a language we can use that runs on the web. We're going to take a look at a couple basic commands in JavaScript, and then all together try a couple challenges here of incorporating JavaScript within our page. So could everyone, just to demonstrate sort of what JavaScript does in our browser, could everyone go ahead and open up their developer tools? So if you're in Firefox, it's just the gear up here, or maybe like it might be in here also, and under web developer, go to web console. If you're on Chrome, it might be like press F12, or it also might be in like the top menu and then like more and then web developer. But what you want to get is these tools in the bottom that kind of like have all these tabs and stuff. Let me know if anyone's having trouble finding those. Okay, so there should be like again, this is maybe a little different depending on your browser, but there should be like kind of a trash can icon somewhere, like an X. Just go click that, get rid of, you might have like some error messages or warnings, whatever, but you want to get to, you're just at this kind of like command line in the console tab of your web tools. There's a bunch of different tabs, they all do different stuff, but we're looking at the console right now. So JavaScript, language that runs in your browser. So sometimes you have to compile, like Java has to be compiled by the Java virtual machine maybe. Racket is compiled by like Dr. Racket, but JavaScript can be run by our browser. That's what they're built to do. So let's type a little JavaScript code. Firstly, let's make a variable. So to make a variable, we use the keyword let, and then the variable name. So let's call it, let's just call it A. Not a great variable name. Let A equal, I don't know, myvar. Go whatever you want. Equal 10. So we can set to numbers. We can also set our variables to strings, and we can set them to booleans. If you're not sure what those are, don't worry. They're just values that we can hold. So let myvar equal 10. We don't have to give it a data type. JavaScript is dynamically typed, which means that in some languages, you have to tell it whether it's an integer or a string or something else, but not in JavaScript. We can also change it. So we can say, or actually myvar equals 20. So we just change the value, and myvar holds the value 20 now. Before it held 10. So let's do something to interact with our page a little bit. It's all fun to just make these, but a cool JavaScript built-in function that's used a lot just starting out is alert. Just type in alert. And this is a function that's built into the language that we get for free. And basically, when we call it, we put inside these parentheses a value that we want to show ourselves in a dialog message. So type alert, and then inside here, we're going to put A, or myvar, whatever you called your variable, and it'll give you a pop-up of the value of that. So that you can then just exit out of. So this is like, okay, this is like kind of cool, but the thing to note is that our browser is literally running JavaScript for us. So it can run it right here in this console. What we do in our JavaScript code in our website is instead of typing it out line by line in this console, we'll type out a whole file full of JavaScript code that then executes all at once. And then we can make functions, which are basically just blocks of code that we can then call at some point in our website to do fun stuff. And that's pretty much what JavaScript does for our websites. Just lots of code that does some stuff that we'll call as we run the page. Like maybe it calls some code when we click on a button. Maybe it calls some code when we first load up the page. Maybe when we like a post, it'll call some code to like talk to the server and do something. So yeah, also, first of all, console is also pretty, this right here, if you just want to test out JavaScript code, this is also a great place to do it. I use this all the time. So let's go back to our file. So same code we were just doing, except now it's on a file for us to use. We can rerun it. What we're going to do is call some JavaScript code from an HTML function. So from an HTML button. So I want everyone to take a look at line 11. Function say a name. It calls that alert function again. Remember that we pass in a value and it alerts it. So in this case, it's going to be learning name, which if we look on line 6, has the value pause. So we want to call this function from within our HTML code. When they're made right away, functions don't do anything. We have to call them explicitly. So in our HTML, let's go down to that the bottom until, or actually maybe around the middle. Find button. It might be on around line 60 or so for you. So button, find the button tag that says click me in the middle. And we're going to connect this HTML element to a JavaScript function. So we're going to give it an attribute to do that. And that attribute is onClick. So we see how we get autocomplete. And the value of onClick is the JavaScript function we want to call. So it was called say name. So literally just type the name of it and then type remember it put those parentheses too. And what this is telling the file is when I click on that button, I'm going to call the JavaScript function say name. So let's try that out. Remember, whenever you make edits, you have to click run at the top to see them in action. And we're going to go ahead and click that button. And you should get a pop-up message that has the value of that variable. Okay, so basically the power of JavaScript is allowing us to run code to do more stuff on our page. So everyone take the next like few minutes or so to try some of those challenges at the bottom. They're a little tricky, but luckily linked there are, you might only be able to do one or two, and that's totally fine. We actually did the first one just together. But the link to there are documents that, or links that will help you figure out how to do it. And let me know if you have any questions. See, there's other JavaScript functions too. You can also call those from your button if you want to try that out. Also, feel free to just play around here. So this writes to my document. Delete everything else though. There's also a built-in prompt function that lets you type text in, and then I alerted it back. That's also documented here. I think that's the third challenge. Unfortunately, though, I think we will be having to head back to the main room pretty soon. But yeah, we won't. There was there also is in the repo like a description of like a challenge you can try out. Okay, so yeah, which we actually didn't get to, but website. So this just like outlines like something you can try out to sort of piece this all together. Sort of hard to fit it in for a workshop this short, but the best way to keep learning this stuff is just to keep practicing it, making your own personal sites, or they'll look, honestly, with web dev, it doesn't look great at first, but with more practice you get better. And the most important thing is just you understand the basics that will allow you to start doing more complex stuff like making React apps, and other projects of the sort. Cool. So does anyone have any questions? We got T-minus like 50 seconds before we head back to the main room about JavaScript or anything else we covered.
I think we're good. Is
Cool.
everyone good? Cool, great.
All right, we'll see you back in the main room then.
Hey, Chris, I think you're muted.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Yeah, so hopefully you all got a better understanding of what these languages are, maybe demystify them a little bit and what we can do with them. They're really not too bad getting started with. You don't have to learn all this, like everything about them. You just kind of have to know sort of what they are and how you can accomplish tasks with them, usually through like searching through like some of the docs, which I do at times. So I hope that was a big takeaway from this. We do have other Oasis sessions. So if anyone's interested and I dropped the link earlier, I can drop it again to the Oasis website. We have a 10-week, we have 6 more workshops coming up. It's a 10-week series. And 6 more workshops. But also you don't have to come to the previous one, so you can always jump in halfway. We're covering intro backend dev on Saturday. That's gonna be a collab with Generate. And on the next week, we're gonna be covering more like in-depth front-end dev, so React. So it's like, I guess maybe getting there, but I think you can still gain something out of it, even if you're not like super familiar with JavaScript and all those languages yet. And also, I'm not sure if, hold on one second. It'd also be super helpful if you guys are able, we'd love to hear more like kind of what your experience was like with this. Here's a QR code here. I don't know if I want to see your words, but I just threw a link to a Google form in the chat there.
It works.
If you guys have time, oh, cool. Okay. So, but if you guys have time, so use that or in the chat. If you guys have time, we'd love for you to fill out this short form. It's like 2 questions, just like about what you thought, whether whether you feel like you learned something or what we can do to improve, because we're kind of like, workshops are kind of like one of our main things. So we're always trying to get better at them for the future. And other than that, that's kind of it. Does anyone have any other questions about anything we talked about or Oasis for Jaewon or I? Or like technical questions or anything of the sort? Going once? Okay, cool. So yeah, what usually happens now? Is the meeting over?
We'll sign off.
Okay.
Thanks so much for coming. Sorry if I was really quiet in the beginning. I was sending out reminders to all the NUWIT folks to come and join. I think there's like an OOD deadline tonight, so that might be why attendance is a little lower than normal.
Yeah,
but
it's hard on the weekdays.
For sure. But we really appreciate you guys coming, and the recording should be up after probably by Thursday or within like the next couple days, so that people can check out this meeting if they weren't able to come. And I think it was a great workshop. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. But yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem. And don't forget to fill out that form too. Pretty short. Or I'll send it. No, I already sent it like 2 seconds ago. But I will send the Oasis website, or maybe that'll show up as a link. There we go. The Oasis website again. If you're curious in learning more, if you want to like go to some of like the other workshops we have, basically just add yourself to the mailing list, and we'll send like the workshop mailing list, and we'll send you a reminder email when it comes up. But they're every Saturday at 1 p.m. for basically like the rest of the semester. And I guess I could hang on for like 2 more minutes if anyone has any other questions.
Cool.
Well, you guys...
Thank you so much. So we are dismissed. Have a great rest of the night, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a good one.